Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about why I'm on YouTube. As you've noticed, I started my channel a few weeks ago, and it is extremely obvious that I'm not a very tech-oriented person, okay? I am learning this as I go along. But there really is a reason behind why I decided that I wanted to come on and do YouTube videos. About maybe around 6-7 years ago, I was probably in the very best shape of my life. I had finally broken my food addiction. I was learning all about nutrition. I knew how to eat. I got a trainer. Shout out to John Maynard, who I will always love. I saw John every day. I went walking at the beach every night. I was a solid size, very firm size 12, which for me was awesome. Probably weighed about 175 pounds. And I decided that I was going back to school. I was already a licensed esthetician, and I had gotten my bachelor's degree in nutrition. But I knew that I really wanted to teach. So I decided to go to school to learn to become a teacher. So it was during this time that I started feeling kind of funny. And what happened is one night I was in the living room with my kids, Ian and Blythe, and we were watching TV, and I said to them, "Guys, did you hear that helicopter? It sounds like it landed on the house." And they laughed, like, "Mom, what are you talking about?" I said, "The helicopter that I hear." Well, we all kind of sensed that something wasn't right, okay? I was a little dizzy, I was a little bit lightheaded. So I called my doctor, and he said, "Well, Jackie, you have to go to the hospital. You have to get checked out." Long story short, I go to the hospital. After many, many hours in the emergency room, they diagnosed me with vertigo, gave me some medicine, sent me home. If you guys don't know me personally, I'm a very stubborn person, and when I have a goal in front of me, I am determined that I'm going to meet that goal. Well, this goal was I was going to become a teacher, okay? Everything kind of happened late in my life, and it was just very important that I get this through. So I wasn't feeling what I'd say great, but I figured maybe I'm just a little run down, and then I noticed that I was losing the hearing in my ear. And I also noticed I was starting to walk to the side a little bit. I'm thinking, no, maybe I've just got a cold. I don't know what it is. And then my eyes started doing this thing where they couldn't focus. And so one morning when I go to get up, you guys understand, vertigo makes a room spin around. But what happened to me was when I got up, the room was going up and down. So I called my doctor, and I tell him what's going on. And he said, "Well, let's start with the ear, nose, and throat specialist and check out what's going on with your ear." So I go and see someone, and after a couple of hours of testing and everything, he comes out and he says to me, he says, "Jackie, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I know that you have a neurological issue." Well, guys, that will absolutely make you feel like you've been punched in the gut, because anything involving your brain is frightening because your brain controls everything. So I get back to my family doctor, who sends me to a neurologist. They rushed in and got me an MRI that very night, and realized that there was a tear in the lining of my brain. My family and I were horrified, my kids and I. We didn't know what was going to happen or where this was going to end. They got me in, and what they usually do for that is they found out that I have cerebral spinal fluid leaks, which means my spine leaks. When your spine leaks, it affects the pressure in your brain. And it is actually, your brain can begin to sink if it gets bad enough. And so I was having more and more symptoms daily. Good news is I did finish, and I did get my instructor's license. And I was later on in life able to get a job doing that. But at this particular time, what happened is what they do to begin with is they'll send you home, and they'll tell you to lay flat for a week. You can have one pillow under your head, and you want to consume massive amounts of caffeine and coffee and caffeine pills and things. And the idea is that that leak will heal itself. Well, it made me feel a little better, but then after a couple of days when I got up, it was all bad again, and I started having vertigo all the time. So now I'm having to live on a couple of different nausea medications. I'm feeling worse and worse all the time, and they decide to do a blood patch. So what they do is they go into the artery in your arm, and they take out blood. Now this was after I had to have spinal tap done, which spinal taps are absolutely just as scary as they sound. By now I've probably had half a dozen. It never gets any easier to do them. So they go in, And the thought is they pull your blood out and they inject it in parts of your spine. They can't exactly pinpoint where the leak is, but they know about the general area. So when they inject the blood, the hope is that it will kind of scab over and seal that up. Well, it worked a little bit, worked for a while. One of my worst nights I remember is, by this point, the kids were having to look after me all the time because my health was deteriorating so rapidly. And I remember I was in my room laying in bed, and Ian came in. He said, "Mom, are you okay?" And I was really trying hard to tell him something, but I could feel that my cognitive awareness was beginning to slip. And I remember saying to him, "Ian, I feel like my brain, I can feel it moving from side to side in my head." Which later the doctor confirmed that you actually can. My pressure was so low. They rushed me to the hospital. Long story short, believe this or not, the doctor, who was a Yale graduate, head of neurology, tells me, "Well, you are getting older, so just be careful when you get up." Well, this wasn't good enough for my family, and it wasn't good enough for my family doctor, so I was sent to Chapel Hill. When they admitted me, they did a series of tests. I was in the MRI all the time. I had to have more spinal taps, and they came in one day. Now, keep in mind, I have 2 children, and my son's running his own company. He's also looking after my mom and my stepdad, who we were experiencing Alzheimer's with him. My mother was dying. And Ian, who is my son, and my daughter Blythe, she would work long days every day as a hairdresser, never missed a day of work. Ian never left my side. He slept in a straight chair, not a recliner chair, never left my side. And Blythe would come to see me every night and go back the next morning to work. And to say that they're the most amazing people on this planet is just not good enough. I owe everything that I am to those 2 people. I had Ian when I wasn't married. I was a single parent. So I've always been his mom and dad. When I did get married, I married a man who didn't love me, he didn't love my son, and he didn't love his daughter who he had with me. So we have always been an extremely tight little unit. Probably closer than most parents with their children are. So here they are taking care of me. Blythe would get up. She would cook for me breakfast, lunch. She would clean up. She would do everything. She'd take care of the dog. She'd walk the dog. She'd go and she'd work all day long. She'd come home. She'd clean up. She'd do anything that needed to be done. And she never missed a day of work. She'd drive back and forth from the hospital. So one day they were both up there, and I never knew this because I cried a lot, and I have never been that weak in my life. I always had to be the strength for my children. But at this point, they had to be strong for me. And I didn't know. Here I'm crying and telling them, I don't know what's going to happen. And they were strong, and they never one time let me see anything but strength. But they'd be out in the hallway crying with each other. And okay, I said I wouldn't cry, so I'm going to try really hard not to. So one day the doctors come in at Chapel Hill, and they look at me, and they look at my children, and they say, "There is nothing we can do for your mother. She does not have 1 leak. She has 12 leaks in her spine." A few minutes later, a brain surgeon comes in and tells me that he is going to cut a chunk of my brain out, hoping that will alleviate my symptoms. Please understand right now, doctors are great, but they are people. And if you feel like something's not right, please don't go with it just because they're doctors. When my doctor back home heard about it, he called him up and said, "You're not touching her. She's going to lay in that bed until I can get her over to Duke, to neurology, where they know what they're doing." A week later, I was in Duke, and I would spend a week and a half there. Fortunately, they are experts in the cerebral spinal fluid leak area. I had to have more spinal taps. I've had so many needles put in my spine where they had to do blood patches. Long story short, it took a very long time. I would go back and back and back and back where those patches would blow. When I get a case of vertigo, it means my spine is leaking. It isn't anything else in the world except my spine is leaking. When I would go through this, the way I would describe how my head would feel is I'd say, "You remember Hey Arnold, football head?" It felt like I was actually walking around trying to balance that. So whereas I had low spinal fluid and it makes the pressure go down in your head. When they finally sealed me back up for good, now I have what is called intracranial hypertension, which means I get too much fluid in my head. And the pressure builds too fast. And I have to take a medication that hikers have to take when they go up into really high elevations. So when I said I'm not on medication, that is a medication that I have to take sometimes. That's not a result of any kind of food I've eaten or anything like that. That just is a condition. There's nothing that you can do anything about. My leaks in my spine are spontaneous. They still don't know why that happens to me. But how this all ties into me being on YouTube is, it was years that I spent in recovery. Absolute years. And I mean, I would go on and I would get my dream teaching job with the most amazing boss. And let me shout out to Rob Atwood right now. I love you, Rob. You are a dear, dear friend to me, and I miss you so much. And while I had that job, I would still get struck down with these leaks in my spine. And never one time did Rob give up on me. And the teachers that jumped in and they would take care of my class till I could get back out there. And the wonderful students that I had that still went on and all made A's. I mean, it was amazing, the support that I got. But it was a very difficult time in my life. And so much of my time was spent at home by myself. Now, my children were calling every 20 minutes or so, making sure I was okay. Because when I left the hospital, I couldn't drive. I couldn't walk by myself. It was debilitating. You took a person who was at the top, and all of a sudden you strip them of everything. I was afraid. I was forced to see my mortality right in front of me. My mom was dying at the time. That's how I actually said goodbye to her, was on the phone. Again, don't want to cry. Do not like to cry. But my brain was in a mess, and I couldn't get to her, so we said goodbye to each other on the phone. Wow. I did not expect to get teary. But anyway, how I came to be on YouTube is, like I said, y'all know I'm not techie at all. Just look at my videos. But during my healing, my son said to me, he said, "Mom, have you ever checked out YouTube?" I said, "No, not really. I'd heard about it through my students at school." And he said, "Well, this is how it works." So then, oh my gosh, I'd get on it and I'd see this thing called a mukbang, which I didn't even know what that was in the beginning. And I'd watch competitive eaters. I was a makeup artist for years. I'd watch tutorials, and all of a sudden it offered me something that distracted me from what I was dwelling on. I was diagnosed with PTSD from what happened to me, because anytime you have a near-death experience, that's what can happen to you. But YouTube became something that you kept watching the same people over and over again. And although you're not connected to them, it feels like a community. And I realized for me that was a huge part of my recovery. And I'm not an introvert at all. I'm an extrovert. If you're in the room with me, whether I know you or not, I'm going to strike up a conversation. But I realized that it is definitely an outlet. And so now, even though I am well into recovery, will be 3 years in February without a leak, and I hope it never happens again. I was teaching up until March, spring break, and then that's when the pandemic hit. I have doctors that have called to check on me to make sure that I am not out and about, that I am staying in. And even though it is hard for me, and I had to give up a job that I loved and the people that I worked with, this is my reality. As hard as my experience was, if I had not had my children with me, I don't know what would have happened. I really genuinely don't know what would have happened. So I can't imagine now. And I feel so sorry for everybody who's had to go through sickness and had to do it by themselves without their family there. And so for me and my family, the risk was too great for me. And we decided that, well, my kids basically have put me in a bubble. But that's why I wanted to come on here, because I was hoping that maybe if you're stuck at home, whether you're sick or whatever the reason is, that you have somebody that you kind of feel like there's something there, a connection there. And that's really all I want to be to people. I just would like to be that connection. So thank you for listening to me. Again, you don't know me. Sharing is not a part of my personality at all. I'm the person everybody tells things to, and I don't really tell a lot about myself. But it's a new era, and I feel like it's time for it now. So please, cherish the people in your life. Don't be afraid to tell people that you love them. I don't think that family means who you're blood related to. I think it's the people that love you and who are there for you. And just let me say, Ian and Blythe, thank you for everything you did for me. And wow, I can't cry. I'm a very ugly crier, so you just don't want to see that. And let's just remember to take care of ourselves and take care of each other, because that's really what we got. All right, guys. I will talk to you again soon on a happier note. Hopefully this will be the only one that ever almost brings me to tears. I hope everybody has a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.